First and foremost, let's welcome Patrick Carney and Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys for American Songwriter. Thanks for being here, fellas.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We have a couple big announcements, a new album and a new tour.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little about the new album. Like typical Black Keys fashion, it still sounds like the Black Keys, but it also sounds like something different.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think we have to go back a little bit to talk about this new album, which is like, you know, we spent like a lot of time making our last record, Ohio Players, and we were, you know, very proud of that album. And, you know, a series of kind of unfortunate events happened, which resulted in us canceling our tour, you know, and some people that we trusted pretty deeply, you know, I feel like kind of f***ed us a bit. So it left our left our fans, and it left us kind of
in limbo, really.
Yeah, with only
and
one.
we couldn't market the album that we'd worked so hard on. We couldn't really share it with our fans, so we felt like
There's one thing to do.
yeah, we had to go.
Get back in the studio.
We had to go record, and try to like
Blow some steam off.
yeah, absolutely.
We had to get back into our zone, make something that we were proud of, so that we could try it again.
Well, some of the songs that I've been hearing already, I get the vibe of let go, gratitude. I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit. I would have surmised that it plays into what went down last year, and then letting the water roll off your back and keep moving forward.
I mean, that's definitely what No Rain, No Flowers is all about. You know, I think it's our like trying to get over it type song. I don't know if it really, we're not over it, but that's where we know we need to be.
Yeah.
Is that song. We know we need to get there.
It's our mantra.
How close are you?
We feel like maybe if we could just sing it every night on tour, it'll start
we're-
to set in.
Exactly. I think we're one tour away from being over it. But anyway, you know, here we are with the new album, 13th album. For me, that's like a thing where it's like, I was like, we've made more albums than Pearl Jam. We've made more albums than The Who. We've made a shitload of albums. And to see you can still get that deep in your career, you know, it's actually kind of exciting, I think. 'Cause for me, like the scariest part of this was pretty scary, what happened to us, but the second scariest thing that happened to me in our career is when it felt like we could easily get complacent and just make a ton of money without having to do a bunch of work. You know, without having to throw passion into it, without having to throw creativity into it. And I think we saw that potentially happening at some point in our career. And we kind of we talked about it, and we decided that that's not the career we have any interest in having, you know. And so that kind of forced us into Dropout Boogie and into Ohio Players, which I think that was our biggest undertaking to date. Like, it was like we spent like a lot of time in the studio. We were going to London and LA and working with Noel Gallagher and Beck and Dan the Automator and Greg Kurstin. So we came into this record, we took the same work ethic, and we just, the minute we realized things were, we got a list of people we wanted to work with, and we started making calls, and we were in the studio for about 3.5 months straight. So we pushed hard on this album, and you know, the first person we called was Rick Knowles, because Dan had produced Lana Del Rey's record Ultraviolence, and we were talking about that, and Dan's like, you know, there's this guy, really good songwriter Lana writes a lot with, or has written a lot with. You know, we've been collaborating with some of our favorite musicians, and he's like, we've never really collaborated with a songwriter. He's like, this would be a good place to start. And so we reached out to Rick. Neither one of us had ever met him. And it just turned out that he happened to be coming to Nashville, like, for the first time. He'd never been to Nashville. He's like 60. But he's gonna be there like a week later. So we set up a couple of dates, and the second song we wrote was No Rain, No Flowers. And we had a very productive situation with Rick. and he came back in October, and we worked more. And it was great. It was eye-opening for me. That was the first time I'd ever been in a room with someone like that.
Yeah. What was that like for you to be in the co-writing process? Maybe kind of a uncharted territory for you in terms of with the Black Keys, and to kind of let the wall down a little bit and let some other people into the process?
You know, I'd done it so much here in town, working on other people's records, but just had never done it with Pat. But I knew we'd like it if we got in the room with the right people. That's kind of how it is. You know, it doesn't always work, but when you get in the room with the right person and you have that connection, it's where like everything gets better. You know, they can kind of take what's great about you and help you, you know, do things that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
Was that a difficult thing to go through? Because sometimes it's hard. You know, myself as a journalist, it's you think of the idea of like, you know, you don't want to be an island to yourself, but sometimes you become one.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've spent enough time doing that, being totally by ourselves, making recordings.
We've had some training too, as far as like working with Danger Mouse in different capacities. One as a producer, and two times as like a full collaborator. You know. So yeah, I mean, I think early on it would have been really difficult for us to do.
Impossible. It would have been
It
impossible.
would have been impossible.
Why would it have been impossible?
We were just too insecure and stupid, and didn't know shit about anything. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like fun.
It's the Dunning-Kruger curve, whatever it is. You know, it's like you think
It's
you know
fun for a
more.
while.
But then to that point though, like the flip side is to be dumb and stupid is what it takes in the beginning to be stubborn enough to push through some obstacles that most people would give up on when you're getting to a certain point early
Absolutely.
on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the arc of a band. And that's why like sometimes.
Stupidity into wisdom.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why bands break up. You got to be dumb enough to get in a van and do something and think that you're good enough to be doing it. And then I think bands break up because one person and not the other people get to the point of understanding, like that you have to grow or something, and then that's where the tension starts. And we've always been on the same page. I mean, down to like yesterday we got a master and we had 6 different versions of the master. And independently, we both picked the same thing. And like, if you went there, if I played all 6 for you, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I mean, that's how dialed in we are.
Well, to that point, you talk about the early years, whether you realize it or not. Although we're only in the early part of 25, next year is going to be your 25th anniversary. Even though both of you are both in your mid-40s, you're still very young. What really sticks out about those early years when you think about where you were in '01? Because I hear, I've seen stories, interviews that you've done where you would drive from Akron to Brooklyn and lose money and nobody would show up, and then drive all the way back immediately after the gig.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, somehow we wouldn't lose money, and we would break even.
Yeah.
Because we just, I
Had
don't know.
no expenses.
Yeah, we'd avoid the toll roads. I mean, it was psycho.
We drive 9 hours, get a shawarma, and then drive back.
Yeah.
There's no expenses.
We put the hours in, that's for sure.
But where did that come from? I mean, you were 19, 20 years old at the point, and obviously you're young and ambitious in whatever you want to do in your life, but I mean, that's a different level where you're just like putting yourself through hell and back to make a dream happen.
I think it's a couple things. I'd seen some friends who were like in hardcore bands do that version of touring to a certain degree, so I knew it was like possible. But I think really it comes down to is Dan and I have we have a strong work ethic, and also I think realized that this was the only option. I was in a third-year freshman in college with like 8 years of remedial math left to go. Like I wouldn't have been able to be a dental technician. What am I going to do?
There was no plan B.
It was either weed whacking or hitting the drums.
Yeah.
Basically. But we were obsessed with music. I mean, when Dan would pull up to this punk house I lived in, he'd like open up his minivan side door to grab his guitar, and it would just be like CDs pouring onto the street. I mean, we were just glued into, discovering music and listening to everything we could get our hands on, and it was all-consuming passion, which it still is.
It has to be to make it this far.
And I think, there's a level of like, we lucked out in lots of ways. We made this demo, Dan was like, we should send it off. And he picked some labels and we got an opportunity to make a record, no advance. It was just basically, if you can do this, send it to us and we'll put it out. And every time we got like a little type of opportunity, we took it, and doors started kind of opening. And before you know it, we had Seymour Stein flying to see us within 6 months of our first show. And we somehow had the balls to like basically tell Seymour to f*** off because he couldn't get a contract to us. Two broke 22-year-old kids in Akron were making decisions about signing to a label from Mississippi because we idolized some of these musicians rather than sit out and wait for like the big record contract. There's all these things that have happened to us over the years, and I think, that's why last year was so fucking hurtful, because we pride ourselves on our decision making sometimes, and we had taken
trusting our gut.
Trusting our gut, and so we had just, it's hard to trust your gut when you're lied to, ultimately.
Yeah.
And it's got to be hard too, because sometimes the scene that you've created gets so big that you can't see the whole picture, And it's like when you're at a really nice restaurant, it's good when the owner's on the ground level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so now we're pushing into that 25-year mark. What does it mean to you, Dan? And I guess also Patrick, back to you, that when you're on stage, that he's still there with you, that he's the one person that's seen everything that you've seen and understands what it took and.
No, I mean it's incredible, and it's every year the bond that we have gets tighter, and I think that with every year that passes, you kind of realize how special it is, the relationship, and how unique it is. So, yeah, I definitely don't take it for granted.
What about for you?
Yeah, same. I mean, we have a very strong relationship, We've been through a lot. We can get through a lot. Yeah. And, I think the 25-year thing for me, yeah, it's surreal because it doesn't feel like 25 years. I feel like we still have, I think we have more fun now. I know we have more fun now than we did the first 10 years of the band. And then after that first 10 years, there was a pressure cooker. It was all pressure for a while.
Yeah, we're actually able to enjoy ourselves in a way that we never were, in a weird way, now. So it's like, we're really looking forward to playing shows and making more music.
And with the tour too, obviously you have the new album coming out, but in essence it'll be a double album tour, right?
I think that, we've realized over the last year or two, just like, I think we first got popular, we never had a song on the radio. We were our career existed, and it was like based on playing live shows, without any radio stuff. And then once we had a radio song, like our career transformed into this other thing. And I think that what happened last year was like, it rattled us enough to just be like, what is it that we want to be doing? As far as what should these shows feel like? And we have these two new albums that we now haven't toured on, but we also have, we probably have 100 songs we've never played live. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good time to start accessing some of that stuff, so bringing stuff out of the catalog that we haven't touched in a long time or ever, just kind of like flaunting the catalog a bit.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
What does that live realm still mean for you? I mean, obviously you guys love being in the studio and creating, but the payoff is to be in front of that audience. What does that mean at this juncture?
I think it depends on the show only feels as good as the crowd, and we've been trying to pick venues where we can feel good on stage. Touring and being there for your fans in that way is like, it's the lifeblood to your career. You can sit there and make records all day, and you'll have your cult following or whatever, but it is like, you look at how many bands don't make records and tour and have these thriving careers. We've actually just chosen the hardest way to do this.
Well, it's because you care.
Always.
Well, it's because we're obsessed with music, but we've chosen the hardest way to do it.
And one of the things when you look back on all of those 13 albums, they all still sound fresh and relevant as the day they were made. And in my opinion, a lot of that is because there's always a thick thread of the blues running around in there. And it's a reason why I think the Rolling Stones are still relevant sonically, and then the Animals and things like that, because the blues is always cool and it always ages really well. Now that you've been 25 years
Well,
in.
let's just say, let me clarify that. I agree with that, I think, but it's like an apple. But it's like if the blues is like apples, I think we've chosen the right strain.
Yeah.
Because there's the wrong strain.
Yeah.
We could be choosing the yellow strain of apple blues.
Yeah. Well, like if the Stones were a pop.
Yeah, the mushy mealy
Yeah.
apple, and we're gonna like that like Fiji, that
Yeah.
Honey Crisp.
Well, it's like if the Stones were a pop band, it would look weird now. But they had that thick thread of blues. That's why it still looks great on stage just many years later.
Well, it's funny because like we were 18 years old in 1920. We were idolizing these R.L. Burnside Jr. Come on, they were like 65, 70. So they were our rock stars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Honestly, still one of the best shows I ever saw was R.L. Burnside in Cleveland.
Did you ever get to see Junior?
Never saw Junior.
I always wanted to see him. But when you think about the blues, it's one of those things where it's deceptively simple, but it's not. Like on the surface, you could say, okay, it's this, but then it takes a lifetime to figure out all the levels of it.
Dude, let's go around and get cheeseburgers and just see how many terrible cheeseburgers there are. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about music that's so magical, is that, you have like whatever, 12 notes, and you have the same people using the same instruments, eventually like the same kind of shit everywhere. But the outcome can be so different,
What is it you do love about the blues? It's not meant to be a loaded question, but when you really think about, RL and Junior and how you could put that album on right now and you'd still be just as in love with it as the first time you heard it.
I mean, it's always kind of propulsive. It's basically dance music, and it's very raw and kind of a little slightly out of tune, sometimes a lot out of tune, and we like that, I think.
They're also clearly self-taught, these guys. There's an authenticity that's just palatable when you put on, most of that North Mississippi stuff.
And the irony of it is that like it can be sometimes very heavy and sorrowful music, but it's meant to uplift people.
It's party music,
Yeah.
for the most part.
I mean, I think it's like the first time we went to Memphis. Well, Dan had been there before, but the first time the Black Keys went to Memphis, it was my first time, and I just acknowledged like how much of our musical like taste comes from this area. Like growing up listening to my dad, saw Otis Redding in '67. I grew up listening to Stax shit, High Records shit, and then we both kind of independently found the Fat Possum stuff, and Dan introduced me to Junior. It was like, it's crazy because there's something from that pocket where it is just like, it's still when you go there, you can feel it. There's just like, there's something very authentic about that. And it's funny because I noticed that a lot of the indie rock bands I grew up listening to in the mid 90s, like Pavement and John Spencer Blues Explosion and Silver Jews, they would all go make their records.
It's magic.
in
It's a
Memphis.
magic city.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I love about the Black Keys is that there is that thick thread of the blues, but it's also meant for your body to move. And I think that whether subconscious or consciously, it's some of the ethos of the band, I would surmise.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of music we like to listen to, and we like when there's a beat. I feel like great drummer and the bass player can like make a song sometimes. Most of the time, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Now,
the first thing I listen to.
What is that feeling for the two of you when you go into the studio, whether it's here or somewhere else, and it's just the two of you, and you get behind the kit and you plug into your amp? Where do you go in the terms of what that feeling is when you play with Patrick?
I mean, yeah, like the more I play with other people, the more I realize how special it is and unique it is and how we're able to just instantly kind of lock in. And I kind of know where he's going to go most of the time. And, we're just able to kind of build these songs very quickly, just because feel like we're really very often on the same page.
We've been doing these record hangs where we play 45s that we've been collecting, a lot of all kinds of stuff, garage and a lot of soul, a lot of early funk. But yeah, I think the drums and bass can make a song for sure, but the vocals are the thing that can really ruin a song. Like how
Instantly.
that's the thing that will. That's the main ingredient. Yeah, I've heard more songs ruined by vocals than made by drums.
Well, lastly, the world's a crazy place right now, and it's always been a crazy place, always will be a crazy place. So when you think about, the power of music and the power of what you do, whether recorded or live, and you think about the experiences you've had and the people you've met and the people that you've interacted with and inspired and inspired yourselves as well, what is the culmination of that thus far taught you about what it means to be a human being?
I think essentially my understanding is everybody f***s up. Everybody has a hard time. There's a struggle always, and music is this. That's why people like us gravitate to this art. I think some people, maybe they immerse themselves in films or books or whatever, but there's something transportive about music that on your worst day, you can put on even the saddest song and somehow it is uplifting. You feel heard, you feel it resonates. It's a magical thing, music.
Yeah, there's some sort of ancient, crazy thing that's going on there that we don't even really understand fully, I don't think.
There's something very universal about it. And I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody walks through the life approaching things differently, different ideals and whatever, but like a good cheeseburger, it can speak to everybody.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time.
thanks for doing it.